Springboks are taking on Ireland this weekend, folks, at Loftus. It's number one in the world champion South Africa, up against number two in the world, Six Nations champion Ireland. We're going to go through the squads which have been named. The South Africans named their squad a couple of days earlier, but the Irish squad is now out. There's one debutant, which is a little bit of a surprise from Andy Farrell. We'll go through the recent history, some stats, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. It is certainly a very tasty one, just based on where these two teams are at, and in terms of the way both coaches are going about their kind of World Cup cycle. I think Andy Farrell's on the record as basically saying he doesn't buy into the idea of World Cup cycles. Each kind of game is its own beast. So both these sides are, I would say, a bit older and a bit more experienced than what we're seeing in some of the other series with the likes of the All Blacks in England and certainly France. I've seen a very youthful side over to Argentina. For the Springboks, they played a couple of weeks ago against Wales, put in a pretty good performance, which by their own standards I don't think was at 100%. And they've been able to take that already successful team and bolster it with some World Cup winners. Front row, Nche, Bongi, Mbonambi, and Frans, Malherbe. So very kind of familiar looking lineup. Ox remains in the starting lineup from what he did against Wales a couple of weeks ago. Bongi and Frans promoted from their bench roles. So, scrum time is going to be important, and those three guys all love a scrum. Eben, Etzebeth, and Franco Mostert, they've retained their roles in the second row. Franco Mostert doesn't get the kind of same plaudits that Big Eben gets. They got very different roles, but Franco's work in the line-out was great a couple of weeks ago. He was one of the top tacklers. He's always a real kind of workhorse player, more than the kind of flashy guy who gets maybe the highlight reel stuff, but he's certainly doing a lot of the grunt work. Back row, Kolisi, who's back to captain the side. Pieter-Steph Toit retains his role in the number 7 jersey, and with Sia being back on the flank, Kwagga Smith switches to number 8. There's kind of previously been talk about Kwagga being too small to be a number 8, but I think we've seen with that kind of super sub role that he made his own over the last couple of years that it's not just about his size. He still busts tackles, despite the fact that he's not the biggest guy. Perhaps that sevens background gives him a little bit more of that elusive running style, but he's certainly not an easy guy to bring down, and he's certainly a threat at the breakdown too. Pieter-Steph's going to get through those tackles, and Sia's had a little bit of external pressure put on him. Rassi kind of dismissed it in terms of the lack of fitness thing, which had been coming out of his French club, but I'm sure Sia will have a point to prove on his return as well. Faf de Klerk, Handré, Pollard, that is a familiar 9-10 combo for the Boks at the minute when Pollard's been out. The 10 question has been, I don't know if it's been ever fully answered. Manie Libbok's showed flashes of brilliance at times, but come World Cup crunch time, it was Handré that was the man that was relied upon to, or trusted to get the job done, and he's trusted with this Irish task ahead of them. Damian, Allende, and Kriel as the midfield. That seems to be the preferred midfield option at the minute. Rassi did talk about Mngomezulu not having had a heck of a lot of rugby in recent times, and just Kriel being in great form, which I think is fair. Like, there's a time when Kriel certainly seemed a long way behind Mngomezulu in terms of his just performance levels, but I don't think you could say that anymore. Jesse's been playing some great rugby. Also, a couple of difficult to stop wingers. Not the biggest guys in Kurtley Arendse and Cheslin Kolbe, but man, very elusive runners, ankle breakers, and very, very dangerous guys to see back. We saw a lot of the Springboks wingers getting some action against Wales. In his debut game, Van was on fire, and Mapimpi managed to get himself on the scoreboard as well. So my dad has always talked about wanting to see Springboks wingers get some ball. They were getting some ball in that game. We'll see if they get some in this one. And then Willie Roux back. Remember, he missed the URC final with, was it a concussion or an injury? But either way, he was out with the hit that he'd taken the week before. But he'll be pulling the strings at the back to make sure the Springbok backline is humming. Bench-wise, Malcolm Marx, Gerhard, Steenekamp, and Vincent Koch are the front row replacements. So Steenekamp comes into the 23. Salman Murat is still there, and Achia Sneeman comes in too. So it's a couple of lock replacements on the bench. Russ, he talked about Achia's ability to kind of bring that energy from the bench. Marco van Staden there in the 21 jumper. So it's just the two back replacements on the bench with Grant Williams and Sasha Feinberg-Mngomezulu, who had a great debut against Wales. Came off the bench, just looked cool as a cucumber, slotted long-range penalties, and looked the business. So I think he earned himself that spot on the bench. Marnie Libbok is obviously one of the guys omitted, but Rassi did mention that Sasha's ability to cover multiple positions when they're going with a 6-2 split maybe put him just ahead of Marnie, because if Marnie comes in, then Handré has to move out one, and then the rest of the back line also kind of has to shuffle out to accommodate, whereas Sasha can likely slot in wherever needed without kind of disrupting the rest of the back line. So, yeah, man, it's a very experienced and powerful looking Springboks outfit for mine. For Ireland, as I mentioned, there's one kind of surprise call, I would say, with Jamie Osborne being at fullback, because he's more of a midfielder for Leinster. I think he started one game at fullback for Leinster, but he certainly had a fair bit of time at under 20s level in the number 15 jumper. He's a big guy. He's like 6'4". So if you're going to field some high balls, he's certainly a guy who can, who can have that kind of natural edge in terms of his pure height and his ability in the air. They asked Andy Farrell, first question was about Jamie Osborne's selection, and he talked up basically every aspect of his game. He's got good hands. He takes the ball to the line well. He's deceptively quick. Basically, any compliments you can pay a player, Andy Farrell paid them to Jamie Osborne. So certainly a pressure match at altitude in South Africa. Interesting one to get your first cap at international level. Front row wise, it's Porter, Sheehan and Furlong, and that's pretty steady as she goes. In recent times, the front row battle is still going to be a fascinating one. I mean, you got world-class front rowers on both sides of the scrum for this one. I mean, Porter also adds that ability to fetch as well. He's one of the top kind of turnover winners in terms of the Irish team, and especially for a prop. He does sometimes concede a few too many penalties, but I seem to remember throughout the course of the Six Nations, those penalties conceded tended to get fewer. Joe McCarthy and Tyke Byrne, I think they complement each other pretty well in that second row. McCarthy's that kind of bit of brute force, and then Tyke Byrne with his ability to break down, ability to steal lineouts, and ability to fetch lineouts of his own. Like I said, I think they're a pretty good tandem. Peter O'Mahony's going to captain the side from number 6. Josh van der Vlier's at 7, and Caelan Doris is at 8. Caelan Doris has got a lot of work in him. Like, he tends to carry the most of the Irish forwards, and he tends to make, recent times, a lot of the tackles as well. So really, really high work rate player. You feel like if South Africa can shut him down, that limits what the Irish forward pack can do going forward. But shutting him down is certainly a lot easier said than done. The number 9 one is a troubling one for Ireland, just in that Jamison Gibson-Park, who is unavailable for this tour, seems to unlock that extra step of high-intensity ball recycle, which Ireland used so well to grind down opposition teams. With Gibson-Park not there, it doesn't seem to fire on as many cylinders. But Craig Casey is called into the 23 for this one, so he's ahead of Conor Murray. I'm sure he's going to be under instructions to keep the tempo high when they do have the ball, but certainly a lot of pressure on the youngster, but he is kind of building his own test match experience, and Jack Crowley is going to pull the strings at 10. He is certainly the incumbent in that position, with Johnny Sexton having retired. Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw kind of continue their midfield combo as well. I also think they've complemented each other pretty well. Bundy with those direct ball carries, busting a lot of tackles. Henshaw has been one of the kind of top offloaders in Ireland's outfit, bringing other guys into the game. And then the back three, Calvin Nash, James Lowe and Jamie Osborne, like I mentioned, you would feel like at altitude, James Lowe with that big cannon boot of his will be looked upon to get his team some territory. And, help out a kind of less experienced guy, Jamie Osborne, in the back. Replacements-wise, Kelleher, Healy, and Beelum. That is also kind of pretty steady as she goes in terms of front row replacements. It will be one to watch as to when one side acts to bring on the front row replacements, when that reaction comes from their opponents. The Springboks traditionally have brought on their front row replacements early. Will Andy Farrell kind of let his starting guys go deep, or will he bring on the likes of Beelum and Healy kind of to match the intensity that the bomb squad brings? James Ryan is there on the bench as well. Ryan Baird too, so you got a bit of tall timber on the bench for the Irish, with Baird covering the back row. And then Conor Murray, Kieran Frawley and Kerry Ringrose. So it is 3 backs on the bench for the Irish. They've not been tempted to go 6-2, despite the fact that a guy like Frawley and a guy like Ringrose can cover multiple positions in that back line. Hugo Keenan, I forgot to mention him. Remember, he's off with the Sevens. Andy Farrell mentioned that he wasn't going to stand in the way of the guy's dream to kind of chase that Olympic gold. So that is why we have a guy like Osborne having to fill in at 15, because in recent years, that jersey just has been Hugo Keenan's, with very few other guys getting a taste of it. Stats-wise, South Africa against Wales last week really limited Wales' chances at attack. It's obviously going to be a different kettle of fish playing this Irish side, but I mean, for example, they only allowed one clean break from the Welsh the entire game, which is pretty ironclad defence. But that being said, when the Irish played a similar Welsh side back in the Six Nations, guess how many clean breaks Wales got in that game? Also one. So both these sides tend to limit opportunities for oppositions to get in that kind of clean space. South Africa tackles at 94% against Wales. You'd feel like it's going to be a bit lower against a more attacking-minded Irish side, but it's been one thing that Rassie, and when Jacques was there as well, it's one of the things they kind of prided themselves on was their defensive shifts. They only kicked it 22 times last week, which actually fits with their average for last year. Like, South Africa gets, I don't want to say tarred with a brush, but they've got this reputation for being a side that only kicks the ball, but they certainly don't kick the ball as much as like in England does. They kick it when they mean to kick it, rather than just kicking it all the time from what I'm watching. They also managed to score a couple of maul tries against Wales as well. It's certainly an area where they've got to pay a bit of pay over recent years. For the Irish, I mean, they're kicking a lot more than the South Africans as well. 29 kicks from hand from them average this year is a fair bit more, a lot of 9 rather than of 10, but it's their passing game that really stands out above other teams. Like, more than 200 passes a game is their average for 2024. Last year was about 190 odd. So most teams mid-hundreds, so a lot more passes every game. They also tend to have more possession than their other teams, but it's interesting because when you go back and look at that game that they played against South Africa at the World Cup, that's one of the few games where Ireland didn't get more than 50% possession. They had 49, so pretty close to it, but Ireland tend to have more possession. They like having the ball, and in that game, I think Ireland only passed it 120 odd times. They didn't get that kind of same freedom to play that kind of quick recycle ball, despite the fact they won the game. But they were kind of put off their regular game a little bit by the South Africans. So it's one that when you look at the Irish stats, they tend to score a lot of their points in the second 20 of each half, because it's so hard for teams to deal with that high intensity for the whole 40. So if the game can be slowed down, that's going to benefit the South Africans. If Ireland can keep that pace high and try to tire the South Africans out, that will benefit the Irish, one would think. But then altitude is also going to be a factor. The Irish guys, I believe, travelled pretty early. So, yeah, we'll see what happens in the final 20, especially in the second half. Recent history between the sides. The Irish are on a 3-match winning streak against the South Africans. It's one of the few sides that Rassie Erasmus has not tasted victory against yet. 2017, 2022, and 2023, all Irish victories. But remember, the 2017 one was Alistair Coetzee's South Africa rather than the Rassie team. And then the 2016 games, 2 of them were South African victories. So of the last 5, it's 3-2 to Ireland. But as I said, the 3 most recent ones going in the Irish favour, the average score being 22-16 to Ireland. But there is one blowout in 2017, which is 38-3, which kind of mucks with the averages a wee bit. Predictions for this one. South Africa are predicted to win this one by 7 points with the bookies and 9 points with the rugby forecast algorithm. So South Africa around about a converted try favourites with those that are making predictions. It is on at Loftus. It's a kind of 5 o'clock early evening kickoff, which is 3 in the morning for me, which is going to be pretty brutal, but I will be up to watch this one. Angus Gardner from Australia is the ref. For those of you in the States, this game is on Flow Rugby, along with another set of kind of summer or winter internationals, depending on which hemisphere you're in. Check out the link in the description if you're in the States, if you want to check out some international rugby on Flow. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. South Africa going to be too good at home. Ireland without Jamison Gibson-Parkham with the debutant at fullback. How do you think they are going to go? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.